The first time Graham Bell whispered, "She's approaching the fairway with dangerous confidence," I nearly inhaled my iced tea. Across the street, HOA President Judith Harrow was walking toward my house with a folder tucked under one arm and the expression of a woman who had recently lost an argument with grass. Graham lowered his binoculars. "She's favoring the left side of the walkway. Difficult conditions. Mild crosswind. No visible remorse." I looked at him. "You understand she can hear you. That improves the broadcast. My name is Derek Walsh, and I lived in Willowmere Park outside Raleigh, North Carolina, where the lawns were tidy, the mailboxes matched, and apparently there was now an unofficial upper limit on how healthy grass was allowed to look. Mine was very green. Not radioactive green. Not artificial turf. Not the sort of green you would expect to find beneath stadium lights with a grounds crew of 20. Just deep, dense, embarrassingly healthy grass. The funny part was that I had not even been trying to impress anyone. 2 years earlier, I had ripped out almost half the original lawn after discovering the builder had installed cheap sod over compacted clay. Water pooled near the driveway, the grass died in patches every July, and mowing produced more dust than clippings. I got tired of fighting it, so I learned soil. Not professionally, obsessively. I aerated the clay, added compost, tested pH, changed the mowing height, reduced fertilizer, overseeded with a grass variety better suited to partial shade, and replaced part of the irrigation schedule with deeper, less frequent watering. It took 18 months. The result was the best lawn on the street. That was apparently my mistake. My neighbor Curtis Reed noticed first. He stood at the edge of my driveway one Saturday holding a coffee mug. "Your grass looks expensive." "It was mostly dirt." "That is not what I mean." "What do you mean?" "It looks like somebody should charge me a greens fee." I laughed. Curtis crouched and touched the grass. "Soft. Please stop petting my lawn. I understand why people become weird about this now. I am not weird. You own a soil probe. That is equipment. You labeled your compost thermometer. It came labeled. You named it. That was one time." Curtis stood. "What was the name?" "Kevin." He nodded. "Exactly. The lawn became a neighborhood curiosity. Not because I promoted it. People simply noticed. A woman 3 houses down asked what seed I used. Another neighbor wanted to know why I mowed higher than everyone else. A retired man named Leon started bringing me photographs of yellow patches in his yard, like I operated an emergency turf clinic. I helped when I could. Mostly, I told people to stop pouring random fertilizer onto problems they had not identified. Then Judith Harrow noticed. Judith had been HOA president for 11 months and approached landscaping the way military commanders approached disputed borders. Everything required consistency. Not beauty. Consistency. She liked identical mulch depth matching mailbox paint, uniform shrub height, and the phrase streetscape continuity. One Tuesday afternoon, she stopped while I was trimming the edge beside my sidewalk. She looked at the lawn, then at the neighboring lawn, then back at mine. "Derek, Judith, your grass is noticeably darker." I looked down. "Yes. Why?" "Chlorophyll." She did not smile. "I am serious." "So am I." She stepped onto the sidewalk and stared across the property. "Did you apply a color treatment?" "No. Dye? No. Pigment? No. Special fertilizer? Normal fertilizer. How much? Less than last year. She frowned. That does not make sense. It does if the soil improves. Her eyes moved toward the sprinkler heads. Are you watering outside schedule? No. How often? Twice a week, unless it rains. That little? Deep watering. She looked suspicious. I was beginning to understand that Judith had not come to learn. She had come hoping to find a reason. What exactly is wrong? She folded her arms. It does not match. The grass? The overall landscape tone. I stared at her. Landscape tone? Your lawn appears excessively saturated compared with surrounding properties. I looked toward Curtis's yard. His grass was pale in several areas because he had spent April trying to fix fungus with more nitrogen. So, mine is too healthy? That is not what I said. You said too saturated. In visual terms. Too green. She hesitated. Yes. That became the sentence. By Thursday, it became paperwork. The courtesy notice arrived in my mailbox. Landscape color inconsistency. I read it 3 times. The notice stated that front yard landscaping should remain harmonious with the established appearance of adjacent residential lots. Apparently, my lawn created an unusually intense green presentation. Curtis read the letter and nearly spilled coffee on it. They find saturation? Not yet. What do they want? Adjustment. How do you adjust green? I assume disappointment. He handed the paper back. This is the greatest letter ever written. It is not. Frame it. I am appealing it. Frame a copy. I emailed Judith asking for the specific, measurable standard. She replied with photographs. My lawn. Neighboring lawn. My lawn. Another neighboring lawn. She had apparently built a visual comparison portfolio. Her email said, "The contrast is self-evident." I replied, "So is health." That did not improve things. A week later, Judith came with Landscape Committee Chairwoman Sandra Kell. Sandra was considerably more reasonable. She walked across the sidewalk, looked at the lawn, and crouched near the edge. Is this turf paint? No. She pulled a few blades. Judith looked horrified. Sandra. I'm checking. Sandra rubbed the grass between her fingers. Natural. I nodded. She looked at me. Fertilizer? I showed her my lawn log, application dates, amounts, soil test results, watering schedule. Sandra flipped through it. You keep records? Because otherwise I forget what I did. Judith looked annoyed by the existence of evidence. Sandra studied the soil report. Your nitrogen level isn't even high. No. Actually a little lower than average. Yes. She looked across the lawn again. So why is it this green? Roots. Judith folded her arms. That is not an answer. It is the answer. I explained the clay problem. Compost, aeration, improved drainage, higher mowing, less frequent irrigation, slow soil improvement. Sandra understood. Judith did not want to. What about visual consistency? Sandra stood. I do not see a violation yet. Judith turned toward her. Look at the contrast. I see it. It disrupts continuity. Sandra shrugged. Healthy grass is not usually considered disruption. Judith stared at her, then at me. This will go to review." She left. Curtis watched from his porch. "She just lost to photosynthesis. Do not encourage her." 3 days later, I received a fine. $100. The category had changed. Not landscape color. That apparently sounded too ridiculous once written formally. Now it was unapproved turf enhancement, resulting in visual nonconformity. I laughed so hard I had to sit down. Then I got angry. Not because of the money, because I had spent 2 years trying to use less water, fewer chemicals, and better soil practices. The result worked. And instead of asking how, the HOA had decided success itself looked suspicious. I called Curtis. He arrived with Graham Bell. I had met Graham once before. He was 55, thin, silver-haired, and spoke in a voice so smooth that ordinary sentences sounded sponsored. He had spent 20 years doing radio play-by-play for minor league baseball, regional golf tournaments, and college athletics. Now he did freelance event announcing. Curtis had apparently told him about the fine. Graham stood at the curb examining my lawn. "Excellent surface." "Thank you." "Fast?" "It is grass." "All grass has pace." Curtis smiled. "That is why I brought him." I immediately disliked where this was going. "No." Graham looked toward me. "I have not suggested anything." "Your voice suggests things." "Professional hazard." Curtis handed him the HOA notice. Graham read it, silently, then looked toward Judith's house. "She walks past here often?" "Every afternoon." "How often exactly?" "Almost daily." He nodded. "Predictable gallery movement?" "No." "Minimal equipment?" "No." "Low-volume commentary?" "Absolutely not." Graham smiled. "You already thought of it." "I did not." "You did now." That was unfortunately true. The idea was stupid, elegant, petty, harmless. If Judith wanted to treat my lawn like it was too professionally maintained for the neighborhood, I would give it professional coverage. No speakers, no microphone amplification, no crowd, no yelling. Just Graham sitting quietly on my porch whenever he happened to be visiting, whispering golf commentary when Judith passed. I told myself it would happen once. That was another mistake. Friday afternoon, Graham arrived with binoculars. "You do not need binoculars." They establish credibility. "She walks 20 feet away." "Precision matters." Curtis sat beside him. I stayed near the garage, pretending I wanted plausible deniability. At 3:40, Judith appeared at the end of the sidewalk. Graham straightened. His voice dropped to a whisper. "And here comes Judith Harrow, entering today's difficult municipal stretch with a one-stroke lead over common sense." Curtis bent forward, shoulders shaking. Judith slowed. Graham continued. "She has spotted the Walsh green." Judith looked toward my house. Immediate concern. She stopped. Graham whispered, "She's reading the surface." Judith turned toward him. "What are you doing?" Graham nodded respectfully. "Providing analysis." "Of what?" "Your approach." "My approach to what?" "The lawn." She looked at me. "Derek." I raised both hands. "He is a guest." Graham lowered the binoculars. "Judith appears unsettled by wind conditions." "There is no wind." "Confirmed." Curtis made a choking noise. Judith walked toward us. Graham leaned closer to an imaginary microphone. "A bold decision. She has left the established path and is now attacking directly." "Stop narrating me." Graham nodded. "Player requests silence." He became completely quiet. Judith stared at him, then at me. This is harassment. No one is following you. You hired him. He is sitting on my porch. To comment on me. Graham whispered to Curtis. Strong challenge from the Rules Committee. Judith heard him. I heard that? Excellent acoustics. She turned toward me. This ends today. What ends? The commentary. I looked at Graham. He looked at me. Then toward Judith. Play suspended due to administrative weather. Judith walked away. Curtis collapsed, laughing. I lasted another 3 seconds. Then I joined him. The next day, Graham came back. Not because I asked. He brought sandwiches. I am not paying you. Curtis is. I looked at Curtis. He shrugged. Entertainment budget. Saturday became worse. Judith walked past with another HOA woman named Marlene Voss. Graham whispered, 2-player grouping approaching the green. Marlene looked around. What? Judith kept walking. Do not engage. Graham continued softly. Veteran strategy from Harrow. She knows eye contact can alter momentum. Marlene started laughing. Judith stopped. Marlene. I'm sorry. She hired him to ridicule me. I know. That is not funny. Graham whispered, Marlene struggling with composure. Marlene laughed harder. Judith abandoned the walk. That was when the neighborhood discovered the commentary. People began timing porch visits. Not crowds. 2 or 3 neighbors at most. Curtis brought a folding chair. Leon walked past, deliberately carrying a rake, just to hear Graham describe his aggressive equipment selection. A teenager rode a bicycle slowly along the curb, until Graham whispered, unorthodox cart strategy. By Sunday evening, somebody had started calling my yard the Green at Willowmere. I hated that. Secretly, I loved it. Judith did not. Monday brought a new warning. Not about the lawn, about targeted verbal conduct. I replied that Graham was not amplified, did not enter common property, did not obstruct anyone, and stopped speaking whenever Judith directly requested silence. She responded that intent mattered. That was interesting, because intent was exactly what I was starting to question about her original fine. Why did one green lawn bother her this much? The obvious answer was control, but something did not fit. Judith had approved several landscaping upgrades elsewhere. One house had replaced half its front lawn with dark ornamental grasses. Another had installed bright white stone edging. A third had planted a row of almost fluorescent lime green shrubs. None matched adjacent properties. Why was my grass different? Then I noticed something strange. Tuesday morning, I found 3 rectangular yellow patches near the curb. Perfect rectangles. Not fungus, not dog urine, not heat. Each patch measured roughly 12 inches by 18. Too clean, too geometric. I crouched and touched the blades. Dry. Brown at the tips. Curtis came over. What happened? I don't know. Chemical? Maybe. We rinsed the area heavily. I took photographs. Wednesday, another rectangle appeared. Different location, same size. That bothered me. Thursday, none? Friday morning, 2 more. Someone was damaging the lawn. Not enough to destroy it. Enough to make it look inconsistent. Graham arrived that afternoon. He looked at the patches. This changes the tournament. It is not a tournament. Someone is altering the course. Stop making this funny. His expression became serious. I am not. I checked my security camera. The front camera covered the porch and driveway. not the far curb. I had no footage. Curtis suggested animals. Rectangular animals, apparently. Sandra from the landscape committee stopped by after I emailed photographs. She crouched near one patch. That looks like heat. From what? She touched the soil, then the grass. Maybe something placed here. For how long? Enough to cook it. She looked around. Do delivery drivers leave packages here? No. Trash bins? Other side. She measured the rectangle with her phone. Same dimensions? Yes. Her expression changed. What? She looked toward me. This looks like a yard sign base. A what? Campaign signs, contractor signs, those little corrugated plastic things. I stared. If something flat was laid on the grass in full sun, it could heat the blades. Why would someone lay signs face down? Sandra shrugged. I do not know. That evening, Graham noticed something I had missed. Judith walked past. No folder, no inspection. She paused near one yellow rectangle. Graham did not announce her. I had asked him not to while we were trying to understand the damage. Judith looked down, then looked toward my porch, then continued. Graham leaned toward me. She knew where to look. I felt something tighten in my chest. You saw that? Yes. Curtis nodded. So did I. I did not accuse her. That would have been too easy. Instead, I moved a small motion-activated camera inside a flower pot near the curb. Not hidden on common property. My yard. Facing only my lawn. Saturday morning, nothing. Sunday, nothing. Monday, rain. Tuesday morning, I checked the footage. At 6:18 a.m., someone entered frame. Not Judith. A man. Tall. Baseball cap. Work clothes. He carried 4 small, rectangular plastic signs. He placed them face down on my grass. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then walked away. I froze the image. Curtis looked over my shoulder. Do you know him? No. Graham leaned closer. I do. I turned. What? He works at Pine Valley Turf Supply. That name meant nothing to me. Curtis frowned. The landscaping supplier? Graham nodded. They sponsor a charity scramble I announce every spring. I stared at the screen. Why would a turf supplier put signs on my lawn? Graham looked at me. I have no idea. Then the man returned on camera 28 minutes later. He picked up the signs. Before leaving, he turned one toward the lens accidentally. The logo became visible. Pine Valley Turf. Premium sod and lawn renovation. Curtis looked at me, then toward Judith's house. You said the HOA wants your lawn adjusted. Yes. What exactly happens if you fail? I opened the violation notice. The corrective options were listed near the bottom. Reduce turf enhancement, restore visual conformity, or if necessary, replace non-conforming turf through an approved landscape provider. I felt my stomach drop. Sandra had given me a list of approved providers when the fine arrived. I pulled up the email. There were 4 companies. Pine Valley Turf was number 1. Graham read the name, then looked toward the yellow rectangles. Nobody joked. For the first time, the mystery was bigger than Judith simply hating green grass. Someone from an HOA-approved turf company was deliberately damaging the lawn that the HOA had already declared too green. And the next afternoon, Judith was scheduled to perform her official re-inspection. Graham stared down the sidewalk, then quietly slipped into his announcer voice. Ladies and gentlemen, we may have discovered an illegal club in the bag. I looked at him. Tomorrow, do not whisper. He raised an eyebrow. What do you want? I looked toward the damaged rectangles, then toward Judith's approaching reinspection on the calendar. Tomorrow, I want you to pay very close attention. Judith arrived for the reinspection carrying a clipboard, a soil probe, and enough confidence to suggest she had never once been defeated by turf. Graham sat on my porch with a legal pad. No binoculars, no jokes, not yet. Curtis stood near the garage pretending to rinse a flower pot that had already been clean for several minutes. I waited beside the damaged patches. Judith stopped at the curb. Her eyes went directly to the rectangles, exactly where Graham predicted. She did not scan the lawn, did not inspect the healthy sections, did not ask what happened. She looked straight at the damage. Graham wrote something down. Judith entered the yard. I see the color issue is beginning to correct. I stared at her. Correct? The lawn is becoming less uniform. That was never the complaint. The complaint was excessive visual intensity. And yellow rectangles help? She crouched, touched one patch, then stood. This may indicate stress. It does? Possibly from overtreatment? No. Excess fertilizer can burn turf. I know. Then this supports our concern. I almost laughed. Instead, I looked toward Graham. He remained silent. Judith noticed him. Why is he here? Guest. Is he going to narrate? No. That seemed to disappoint her, or worry her. She walked toward the second rectangle, then the third. She photographed each. Sandra arrived 5 minutes later. I had asked her to attend because she chaired the landscape committee and had already seen the damage. She looked at the new rectangles. These are fresh. Yes. Judith turned. You have been here before? Derek emailed me. Judith's expression tightened. Why was I not copied? Sandra looked at her. Because he was asking whether the damage looked natural. What did you tell him? That it did not. Judith frowned. Based on what? The shape. She crouched. Same dimensions as the previous patches. Judith looked toward me. You measured? Yes. That seems excessive. I stared at her. You created a violation called visual nonconformity. Curtis made a small coughing sound. Graham wrote again. Judith walked toward the curb. She looked at the healthy grass surrounding the yellow patches. Then she said, if the turf is failing, replacement may be the simplest solution. There it was. Not treatment. Not recovery. Replacement. I asked, with what? Approved sod. From whom? Any approved provider. Pine Valley Turf? She paused. Among others. Sandra looked up. Why Pine Valley? No reason. I watched her face. Too controlled. Not guilty. Not surprised. Something else. Defensive. I asked, have you spoken with them about my lawn? Judith's jaw tightened. HOA vendor discussions are not your concern. Sandra stood. They are if a vendor is involved in enforcement. Judith turned toward her. This is not a vendor issue. I took out my phone, then showed Sandra the footage. Not Judith. Sandra watched the man enter frame, watched him place 4 plastic signs face down on my lawn, watched him return later, watched the Pine Valley logo rotate toward the camera. Her expression changed. What is this? Judith looked at the screen. then at me. You recorded someone? My property. Without notice? My property. She watched the clip. For the first time since I met her, she looked genuinely surprised. Not fake surprise. Real. That is Owen Briggs. Graham spoke quietly. So you know him? Judith turned. Everyone on the landscape committee knows him. Sandra nodded. He handles Pine Valley's HOA accounts. I looked at Judith. Why was he damaging my lawn? I do not know. Did you send him? No. Did anyone on the board? No. Sandra looked at her. Can you say that for the whole board? Judith hesitated. That mattered. She looked toward the street, then back at us. I did not authorize anyone to enter Derek's yard. I believed her. Mostly. The mystery got worse, because if Judith had not sent Owen, then someone else had. Sandra called Pine Valley immediately. She put the phone on speaker. A receptionist answered. Sandra asked for Owen Briggs. He was unavailable. She asked whether Pine Valley had performed any assessment at my address. The receptionist checked. Yes. I looked at Judith. Judith looked at Sandra. Sandra asked, Who requested it? The receptionist paused. Then, Willowmere Park HOA. Judith's face hardened. Who specifically? The receptionist could not disclose internal client notes without authorization. Judith gave her name. HOA President. After another minute, the receptionist read the account contact. Not Judith. Not Sandra. Marlene Voss. Graham finally lifted his head. Curtis whispered, The second player. I remembered her, the woman who had walked past with Judith, while Graham whispered about their approach. Marlene served on the HOA Architectural Committee. Not landscape, not board leadership, but she had access to vendor contacts. Judith called her. No answer. Then again. Nothing. Sandra looked furious. You did not approve this? No. Marlene cannot order landscape work on private lots. I know. Then why is Pine Valley here? Judith looked at me. I do not know. For the first time, we were on the same side of a question. I hated it. Graham spoke. Conditions have changed dramatically. Judith pointed toward him. Not now. He nodded. Broadcast suspended. That almost made Sandra laugh. Judith ended the re-inspection without issuing anything. No new fine, no conclusion. She said the existing case would be paused until the vendor issue was clarified. That was not revenge. It was simply the first sensible decision she had made. Then Marlene called me, not Judith. Me. I answered outside. Derek? Yes. I heard about the camera. That sentence did not help her. You sent Owen? Silence. Then, I requested a turf consultation. On my private lawn? From the sidewalk. He entered my yard. That was not the instruction. He placed signs on the grass. What signs? Pine Valley signs. Marlene sounded confused. Why? That is what I am asking. She exhaled. I asked them to estimate replacement cost. Why? Another pause. The committee needed options. No one told me replacement had been approved. It had not. So why get an estimate? Preparation. For what? If your appeal failed, I looked across my lawn. The yellow rectangles suddenly felt less mysterious. Not because Marlene wanted to sabotage it, because Pine Valley may have been staging measurements badly. I asked, "Did you tell Owen he could enter?" "No." "Did you tell him to put anything on the grass?" "No." "Did you ask him to test the turf?" "No." "Then why did he?" "I do not know." Marlene sounded scared now. Not of me. Of whatever answer came next. I called Pine Valley. This time I reached Owen directly. He sounded tired. "Yes, I was there." "Why did you place signs face down on my lawn?" Silence. Then, "They were marking test areas." "For what?" "Heat response." I stared at the yard. "You intentionally heated my grass?" "I was told the turf might be artificially color-treated." "Who told you?" Marlene said there were questions about enhancement. "So you put plastic over live grass?" "Briefly." "You killed it." "It should recover." "That was your test?" "It is a standard comparative method in some situations." I did not believe that answer. Neither did Graham when I put him on speaker. He shook his head. Owen continued. "We wanted to see whether the apparent color was surface-based." "How would plastic tell you that?" "If pigment or topical treatment is involved, heat and moisture can reveal differences." "Did you have permission?" Silence again. "No." That was the important part. Owen apologized. Not dramatically. Professionally. Pine Valley had assumed the HOA had authority to authorize access. Marlene assumed the vendor would stay at the curb. Everyone assumed something. My grass took the damage. Then Owen said one sentence that made the whole situation stranger. "We were not trying to replace your lawn." I looked at Judith. She had come back to my porch after Marlene called her. "What were you trying to do?" "Document whether it was painted." Curtis almost dropped his coffee. "Painted?" "Yes." "Who told you it might be painted?" Owen hesitated, then said, "Several residents." Judith frowned. "Names?" "I cannot disclose them." Graham leaned forward. "How many?" 3 complaints. That changed everything again. Judith had not invented the entire issue by herself. At least 3 residents had told the HOA they suspected my lawn was artificially colored. I almost respected how ridiculous that was. Almost. Judith looked at me. "I received 1 direct complaint. You never said there were others." "I did not think names mattered. Numbers matter." "You did not ask that way." I closed my eyes. Curtis muttered, "Administrative bunker shot." Graham whispered, "Severe lie." Judith pointed at both of them. "Stop." Then she looked at me. "The first complaint came from a resident who believed you were using turf dye." "Who?" "Confidential." "Second?" "Water use." "I use less than half the old schedule." "I know that now." "Third?" She hesitated. "Unfair competitive appearance." I stared. "What does that mean?" Judith looked embarrassed. "A resident felt your lawn made neighboring properties look neglected." Curtis laughed so loudly a bird left the tree. Sandra sat down. "That cannot be real." It was phrased more formally. "Of course." I looked at Judith. "And you turned that into a fine?" "I treated the complaints as a pattern. A pattern of jealousy?" She did not answer. That was exactly what happened. My lawn looked unusually good. People started assuming there must be a shortcut. Paint, too much fertilizer, excess water, something artificial. Judith, obsessed with visual consistency, interpreted suspicion as evidence. Then Marlene asked Pine Valley for replacement estimates before the appeal was even finished. Pine Valley tested without permission. A dumb complaint had become a chain reaction, and my lawn got cooked by signs. I wanted to be furious. I was, but the absurdity kept getting in the way. Graham looked across the lawn. Rare case where the green has been penalized for being too green. Judith sighed. I know. You finally admit it? She looked at me. The original notice was badly handled. That was not an apology. It was progress. Then Sandra asked the question that should have been asked at the beginning. Why is Derek's lawn actually greener? Everyone looked at me. I pointed toward the soil. Because I fixed it. Sandra nodded. Then show us. That suggestion became Part 2's real turning point. Not a hearing, not a public humiliation. A comparison. We took soil samples from my lawn and, with permission, from 3 neighboring yards. Curtis volunteered. Leon volunteered. Sandra volunteered her own. No experts, no government lab. Just a local garden center offering basic soil analysis for a small fee. The results came back 5 days later. My lawn had better organic matter, better pH balance, lower salt accumulation, no excessive nitrogen, no unusual chemical residue. Curtis's yard had too much nitrogen. Leon's soil was compacted. Sandra's pH was slightly off. Nothing dramatic, no conspiracy, just gardening. The mystery was boring, which made it perfect. My lawn was greener because the soil was healthier. Judith read the reports, then looked at my lawn. That is it? That is it. No special product? Compost. Which brand? Several. No secret treatment? No. Graham whispered. He has played the safest club in the bag, patience. Judith looked toward him. You have been waiting 5 days to say that. Correct. She almost smiled. Then another problem hit. A bigger one. The yellow patches did not recover. 2 weeks passed. Still dead. Pine Valley offered to repair them free. I said no at first. Then Owen came personally. No HOA, no Marlene. Just him. He stood at the curb. I made a bad call. Yes. I should not have entered. Yes. I should not have used the plastic. Yes. He looked at the rectangles. I can repair them. I folded my arms. Why should I trust you? Because I am admitting I damaged them. Fair. He offered replacement plugs cut from matching turf. No charge, no contract, no marketing. I agreed. Under supervision. Curtis supervised like a prison guard. Graham narrated only once. Owen Briggs now repairing a difficult lie of his own creation. Owen laughed. That is fair. The patches began recovering. Then the neighborhood did something I did not expect. People started asking for lawn help. Not because I advertised. Because the story got around. Not the HOA drama, the soil results. Curtis stopped over-fertilizing. Leon rented an aerator. Sandra changed her watering schedule. Within a month, several lawns looked better. Not identical. Better. Judith noticed. That created a new crisis. Her own lawn started looking worse by comparison. Not terrible, just average. Thin near the mailbox, pale around the maple. A little compacted where contractors had parked years earlier. One afternoon, Graham saw her standing at the curb, looking down at it. He whispered, Judith Harrow studies a difficult green. She turned. Do not. He nodded. Player requests silence. She crouched, touched the grass, then looked toward my house. I expected her to ask for help. She did not. 3 days later, I found a bag on my porch. Compost. No note. Wrong brand. I asked Curtis. Not his. Sandra denied it. Graham had no interest in soil. Then another bag appeared. Different brand. Then a third. Someone was leaving compost at my house. That became the new mystery. Why? Was it a joke? An apology? A bribe? A threat from Big Compost? Curtis loved that theory. I did not. Then Graham noticed Judith walking past one evening carrying an empty garden center bag. He looked at me. I looked at him. No, he smiled. Yes. Judith stopped at the curb. She looked toward my porch, then toward the compost bags. You should use the second one. I stared. You left these? 2. Who left the third? She frowned. Third? We both looked at the bags. One was not hers. That was when Curtis walked over. He saw Judith, saw the bags, then admitted, I left one. I stared at him. Why? You said you needed organic matter. I already have organic matter. I was contributing. Without telling me? I wanted mystery. Graham smiled. Successful. Judith shook her head. Then something strange happened. She asked, What do you use under your maple? I blinked. What? The soil there. You want lawn advice? No. You are asking about soil. I am asking one question. That is how advice starts. Her eyes narrowed. Graham whispered, Historic approach to the clubhouse. She turned. Graham? He immediately stopped. I answered Judith's question. Then another. Then 4 more. She had compacted soil, probably minor drainage problems, too low mowing height, exactly the kind of normal lawn issues half the neighborhood had. I told her what I would do. She listened, then said, Do not tell anyone. Curtis was standing 6 feet away. She looked at him. Especially him. He nodded. Absolute confidentiality. Within an hour, Leon knew. That was not the shocking part. The shocking part happened the following Saturday. Judith's lawn turned green. Not gradually. Overnight. Bright. Uniform. Almost fluorescent. I walked past during my morning run and stopped. Curtis came outside behind me. Wow. Graham, somehow already present, whispered, A stunning transformation on the Harrow course. Judith opened her front door. She looked horrified. Not proud. Horrified. I walked toward the curb. What did you do? Nothing. Judith, I did nothing. The grass looked unnatural, too even, too bright. Then I touched a blade. Green residue came off on my fingers. Paint, actual turf colorant. Curtis stared. Someone painted her lawn. Judith's face went white. I did not authorize this. Graham looked toward the street, then toward me. This feels targeted. It was. Because stuck into the soil near Judith's mailbox was a tiny white card. No logo. No name. Just 6 words. Now this lawn matches the standard. Judith read it, then looked at me. For the first time, she understood exactly how ridiculous her original accusation had sounded. Someone had taken her obsession with visual conformity and turned her own yard into the fake version she had suspected mine of being. The mystery was no longer about why my lawn was green. It was about who had decided Judith needed to experience artificial perfection personally, and whoever did it knew enough about the HOA dispute to choose the one revenge neither Graham nor I had planned. The first person Judith accused of painting her lawn was me. The second was Graham. The third was Curtis. By the time she reached possibly Sandra, Graham quietly whispered, "She has now played 4 suspects and remains firmly in the rough." Judith turned toward him. "Not one word." He nodded. "Broadcast suspended." The problem was that none of us had done it. I had spent Friday night at my sister's house in Durham. Curtis had been at a high school baseball game. Graham had announced a charity tournament nearly 40 miles away. Sandra had receipts from a restaurant and enough witnesses to qualify for a jury trial. Judith stood at the edge of her neon green lawn, looking more offended by the color than she had ever been by mine, which was impressive. I crouched again and rubbed one blade between my fingers. The green pigment came off easily. "This is commercial turf colorant." Judith folded her arms. "You know that how?" "Because unlike your original accusation, I actually checked." Curtis made a noise that sounded suspiciously like a laugh. She glared at him. I continued. "Some sports fields use products like this during dormant periods. Golf courses sometimes touch up thin areas. It is not automatically harmful if applied correctly." Judith looked horrified. "You are defending whoever did this?" "No. They entered your property without permission." "That is vandalism." "Yes." She blinked. Apparently, she had expected me to enjoy it more. I did not. The joke was funny. The trespassing was not. Someone had crossed the same line Pine Valley crossed with me, only this time they had brought a sprayer. I looked toward the tiny white card. "Now this lawn matches the standard." The wording bothered me, not because it was threatening, because it sounded like someone who had attended the arguments, someone who knew the exact language Judith had used. Visual standard, matching, green intensity. This was not random internet revenge. It came from inside Willowmere Park. Judith picked up the card. "Do you recognize the handwriting?" "Printed." "Paper?" "Office card stock." She looked toward me. "You are strangely calm." "I've already had one lawn mystery this month." Graham lowered his voice. "Veteran composure." Judith pointed at him. He stopped again. Sandra arrived 20 minutes later. She took one look at Judith's lawn and laughed. Not cruelly, automatically. Then she covered her mouth. "I am sorry." Judith looked wounded. "No, you are not." "I am a little." Sandra crouched beside me. "Paint?" "Yes." "Whole front?" "Looks like it." She examined the curb, then the driveway, then the strip beside the mailbox. Whoever did this knew how to spray. That mattered. The coverage was too even. No streaks, no heavy overlap, no bright blobs around the edging. Someone had used proper equipment. Curtis looked toward the street. "Pine Valley?" Judith immediately shook her head. "They would not." I looked at her. That is exactly what I said before they cooked my grass. Her expression tightened. "Fair." Sandra called Owen Briggs. He answered. No Pine Valley crew had visited Willowmere Park Friday night. No colorant had been authorized. No one from the company had reason to paint Judith's lawn. Owen sounded horrified when he heard what happened. Then he asked one useful question. "What shade?" I looked at the grass. "Very bright." "Blue-green or yellow-green?" I stared. I did not know grass crime had a palette. "It matters." Sandra took a photo and sent it. Owen called back. "That looks like spring tournament green." Graham's head lifted. I looked at him. What? He looked toward Judith's yard, then toward the road. I know that color. Judith's eyes narrowed. From where? Golf events. Of course. Graham ignored the insult. Several local clubs use it for temporary visual touch-up before televised tournaments. Curtis stared at him. You can recognize paint colors from golf? I have stood beside greens for 20 years. That is somehow sadder than I expected. Graham continued. Whoever bought this may have gotten it through a golf supply store. That opened a completely different trail. Not criminal investigation. No police, no hidden conspiracy. Just neighborhood gossip with receipts. There were only 2 golf supply businesses within easy driving distance. One sold commercial products only by account. The other sold small concentrate bottles over the counter. Sandra called. She explained that a resident's lawn had been painted without permission and asked whether anyone had recently purchased that particular shade. The clerk would not provide customer information. Correctly. But he said something useful. They had sold only 3 bottles of spring tournament green that week. One went to a high school grounds crew, one to a golf instructor, one to a woman who said she was fixing a neighborhood demonstration. Judith went very still. Sandra asked whether the woman gave a name. No. Cash purchase. But the clerk remembered something else. She had one of those Willowmere Park canvas tote bags. We all looked at Judith. Every HOA committee member received one at the annual volunteer breakfast. Curtis whispered, That narrows it to the tote bag elite. Sandra looked uncomfortable. Committee members, board volunteers, people close enough to know the language, Judith's own circle. That was when Graham finally said the name none of us had considered. Marlene. Judith turned. No. Why not? She would not. She ordered Pine Valley's estimate without telling you. For planning. She walked past Derek's lawn during the commentary. That proves she can walk? She knew every detail. So did half the neighborhood. Graham nodded. Fair. I did not want it to be Marlene. That felt too obvious. The woman who had already overstepped once would be an easy villain. Easy stories are usually wrong. So we did something more useful. We asked. Judith called her. Marlene answered on the second ring. Judith did not mention the paint at first. She simply asked, Did you buy turf colorant this week? Silence. Then, Why? Judith closed her eyes. That was enough. Come over. Marlene arrived 10 minutes later. No tote bag, no committee folder, no attempt to look innocent. She stepped out of her car, stared at Judith's lawn, and said, Oh. Curtis leaned toward me. Strong opening. Graham whispered, Immediate loss of distance control. Marlene heard him. Is he always here? Unfortunately, Judith said. Marlene looked at the grass again, then at all of us. I did not paint this. Judith folded her arms. But you bought the colorant. Yes. For what? Marlene hesitated, then looked at me. My lawn. I blinked. Your lawn? She nodded. Her backyard had gone mostly dormant beneath heavy shade. She wanted to touch up a narrow strip for a family reunion. Nothing unusual. Nothing sinister. Then who used it here? I do not know. Where is the bottle? Marlene looked embarrassed. My garage. Full? No. How much is missing? I used maybe a quarter. Judith stared. Then someone took it. Marlene frowned. My garage door was open Friday afternoon. Curtis sighed. Wonderful. We have shared lawn paint. Marlene looked toward the street. Then something clicked. My son. Judith frowned. What? Tyler borrowed my pressure sprayer. When? Friday. What for? He said he was helping somebody with a yard project. Everyone became quiet. Marlene took out her phone, called Tyler. He answered. She put him on speaker. Where did you use my sprayer? Pause. Why? Answer me. Another pause. Then a male voice, maybe 22, said, Mrs. Harrow's. Judith's face changed. Marlene nearly dropped the phone. What did you do? Tyler sighed. You said the HOA was driving everybody crazy over Derek's lawn. That does not mean paint Judith's grass. I thought it was funny. Curtis turned away. Graham pressed his lips together. I looked toward Judith. She looked murderous. Tyler continued. I only sprayed the front. I can see that. I used the good color. That does not help. Marlene lowered the phone. Why? There was a pause. Then Tyler said something that changed the mood. Because she fined Derek for having greener grass than everybody else. Judith looked down. Tyler continued. And then Pine Valley damaged his lawn trying to prove it was fake. Nobody interrupted. So I thought if Mrs. Harrow wanted everything to match, hers could match the imaginary version. Marlene looked exhausted. That is not how adults solve problems. Tyler answered, You literally ordered a replacement quote before his appeal finished. That landed hard. Marlene closed her eyes. Curtis whispered, Family communication bunker. Graham did not narrate. Smart man. Tyler apologized. Not beautifully, not immediately, but eventually. He agreed to come over, help wash the colorant from the driveway edge, and pay for any cleanup Judith needed. The paint itself would fade gradually with mowing and weather. No permanent damage, no dramatic police report, no criminal case. Just a young man making an unauthorized joke because every adult around him had turned grass color into neighborhood politics. That was somehow more embarrassing than a conspiracy. Judith sat on her front steps after the call ended. Nobody knew what to say. Finally, she looked at me. This is my fault. I shook my head. Tyler made his own decision. I started the ridiculous part. Yes. She looked at me. Thank you for not pretending otherwise. Any time. Graham whispered, direct honesty from the fairway. Judith looked at him. He raised both hands. Sorry. Marlene sat beside her. I made it worse. Yes, Judith said. Marlene looked offended. You could soften that. You requested a replacement estimate before the appeal. True. And used vendor authority you did not have. Also true. Judith sighed. We were all acting like Derek's lawn was evidence. I looked at the bright artificial green around us. Now yours actually is. Curtis laughed. Judith did too, a little. That should have ended the story. But Graham had one final idea. Not revenge. Coverage. The following Saturday was Willowmere Park's annual neighborhood picnic. Normally it involved folding tables, grilled chicken, children's games, and Judith making announcements nobody listened to. This year, Sandra suggested adding something useful. A lawn walk, not a competition. That part mattered. Residents could voluntarily put out small cards explaining one thing that worked in their yard. Shade plants, drought-resistant ground cover, composting, mulch, native flowers, drainage fixes. My card said, better soil, less water, higher mowing. Curtis wrote, stop adding fertilizer just because you are nervous. Sandra made him revise it. He added, Please. Judith participated too. Her card read, Compacted Soil. Learning. That surprised everyone. The painted color had already started fading. Her real lawn showed through underneath. Uneven. A little thin. Normal. She left it that way. Graham volunteered to announce the lawn walk. I objected immediately. You will turn this into a tournament. Yes. No? Lightly. No. Sandra overruled me. That is how Graham ended up standing beneath a patio umbrella with a small microphone connected to one speaker set at conversational volume. Not targeting Judith, not whispering at anyone. Official picnic entertainment. He announced residents as they walked between yards. Leon Barker now approaching the Walsh property with tremendous respect for aeration. Leon raised a garden fork. Cheers. Curtis Reed crossing toward his own lawn after a difficult early season encounter with nitrogen. Curtis bowed. Mrs. Denson has committed to native clover in the side rough. Page waved. People laughed. Then Judith stepped onto the sidewalk. Graham paused. Everyone looked toward him. She pointed. Be careful. He lowered his voice into that familiar golf whisper. And now Judith Harrow approaches what may be the most difficult green of her season. The picnic grew quiet. Judith stopped beside her lawn. Graham continued. She began the year seeking uniformity. Judith folded her arms. Dangerous start. People laughed. She encountered an unusually healthy surface, questioned the equipment, challenged the player, and briefly became involved in an unauthorized color enhancement incident. Louder laughter. Judith covered her face. Graham. Recovering well. She looked through her fingers. He continued. But the remarkable thing about golf is that a poor opening hole does not require abandoning the course. The laughter faded. Graham looked at her. It requires adjusting. Judith slowly lowered her hands. And today, Harrow appears to have changed clubs. That was all. No humiliation, no giant apology, no resignation, no board overthrow. Just a professional announcer turning the entire ridiculous summer into a 30-second golf metaphor. Judith looked toward her card. Compacted soil. Learning. Then she bowed. Actually bowed. The neighborhood applauded. Not because she had been defeated. Because she had finally learned how to laugh at the thing she had made absurd. After the picnic, she found me near my driveway. I am withdrawing the fine. I assumed. No. She handed me the written cancellation. I want you to know officially. I read it. The reason stated, no enforceable violation established. Natural turf variation does not constitute landscape nonconformity, absent a specific measurable standard. I looked at her. That is surprisingly sensible. Sandra wrote it. That explains it. She nodded, then handed me another page. The Landscape Committee was revising its guidance. No more subjective enforcement based solely on color intensity. Water use would be judged by actual restrictions. Chemical issues would require evidence. Healthy lawns would be allowed to look healthy. Revolutionary. What about visual harmony? Judith sighed. I am retiring that phrase for grass. Only grass? Do not push. Fair. Marlene stepped down from vendor coordination voluntarily. Not from the HOA. She simply admitted she was bad at waiting. Pine Valley changed its policy, too. No entering private residential lots without direct homeowner permission, even when an HOA requested an assessment. Owen repaired the remaining yellow patches. By late summer, You could barely tell where they had been. Tyler paid Judith for professional washing around the driveway, where he oversprayed. Then she made him help aerate her lawn. According to Marlene, this punishment lasted 6 hours because Judith kept finding additional compacted areas. I respected that. The golf commentary did not end. It changed. Graham became a neighborhood habit. Not daily, not stalking Judith. Sometimes he sat on my porch with coffee and quietly narrated whatever happened nearby. Curtis taking too long to edge. Leon fighting a garden hose. Me staring at a sprinkler head like it had betrayed me. Judith occasionally walked past. At first, Graham remained silent. Then one afternoon she stopped. He looked at her. She looked at him. Well? He smiled. Judith Harrow enters today's round under much improved conditions. She nodded. Continue. Confidence appears restored. Accurate. She has elected not to inspect Derek's chlorophyll. Correct. An excellent strategic adjustment. She smiled, then kept walking. That became their arrangement. She could request commentary. He could not ambush her. Strangely, that made it funnier. My lawn never stayed perfect. That is the other thing I learned. A hot August week thinned one section. Moles damaged another. Curtis borrowed my spreader and returned it missing a wheel. The maple dropped leaves too early one year. Grass changes. That is what living things do. Judith's lawn improved too. Not because she copied mine exactly. She stopped trying to. Her yard had more shade, different soil, different drainage. She planted ground cover beneath the maple where grass struggled and stopped treating variation as failure. The result looked less uniform than before. It looked better. One September morning, I found her standing at my curb. She was staring at my lawn. I walked outside. What? She pointed toward a slightly pale patch near the driveway. That area is less green. Yes. Are you concerned? No. She nodded. Good. Then Graham's voice drifted from Curtis's porch across the street. Walsh showing remarkable restraint despite visible color variation. Judith looked around. Where is he? Curtis pointed behind a shrub. Graham raised a coffee cup. Judith shook her head. You people are exhausting. I smiled. That is why the grass grows so well. She laughed and walked away. The funniest part of the entire summer was that Judith had complained my lawn was too green because she thought healthy grass must have been artificially enhanced. Then her own lawn became the only one in Willowmere Park that was actually painted. The revenge did not come from me ruining her yard. I did not. Graham did not. Curtis somehow resisted. The revenge came from the argument becoming so absurd that even Judith eventually had to hear what it sounded like when somebody narrated it back to her. That is why Graham was perfect. He never needed to shout. He whispered. Every inspection sounded more ridiculous at golf volume. Every dramatic HOA approach became a difficult lie. Every unnecessary rule became a bad club choice. And eventually, Judith stopped trying to beat the lawn and started learning how to play the course she actually had. That is the kind of victory we keep at sovereign verdict, where sometimes the strongest HOA revenge is not destroying the person who complained, but giving their bad decision professional commentary until even they can hear how absurd it sounds. If you enjoy original HOA revenge where petty complaints turn into completely unpredictable neighborhood legends, subscribe to Sovereign Verdict. There are plenty more quiet streets where somebody is still one whisper away from a triple bogey in common sense.